Now we continue with William Walker Atkinson's 1908 publication, Practical Mental Influence. We'll be going into Chapter 10, The Need of the Knowledge. But first, we just came from Chapter 9, Influencing and Mass, in which we talked about how mental influence can be used to affect a lot of people at the same time, and how men of politics and business and professional life manifest this form of mental influence, influencing en masse, that is. And we hit on a few bits of valuable information in a nutshell. And now in the need of knowledge, we'll talk about the need of this instruction on the part of the public and how the force is being used against the public, against people, why they should learn to protect themselves, which can be done by learning the principles of this subject. We'll talk about a few good and bad features of mental influence and make it clear that ignorance of the influence is no protection against the influence. So, let's move forward to Chapter 10. The need of the knowledge. Although the true scientific principles underlying the subject of mental influence have been but recently recognized and taught to the general public, still the knowledge is far from being new. The occultists of old civilizations undoubtedly understood the underlying principles and used them in practice, thus gaining an ascendancy over the masses. And more than this, the masses themselves had a more or less comprehensive knowledge of the working principles of the subject. For we find among all peoples in all times records of the use of this power. Excuse me. Under one name or another, under one form or another, mental influence has been operated and used from the earliest times. And to today, even in the most remote portions of the globe, and among the most savage and barbarous races, we find instances of the employment of this force. The forms of the manifestation of mental influence are many, and they are varied. In some cases, it manifests under the form of a fascinating, attracting power exerted by some people, which causes such persons to draw or attract other persons to them. Persons are allured or charmed, so to speak, by others possessing this power, and their affections are taken captive by this mysterious force. Some persons are spoken of as fascinating, possessing powers of charming, having winning ways, or having a great personal magnetism, and so forth. Others exert another form of the power, in the driving of and compelling others to do their bidding. And people speak of them as having a compelling will, being able to work their will on those around them, possessing dominating powers, etc. Well, then we witness the varied phenomena of hypnotism, mesmerism, psychologism, and the like. We're also brought face to face with the wonderful effects of so-called mental science, under one form or another, under this name or that, with the many forms of treatments, so to speak, followed by the different schools and the cults. And then we read into pieces of history about the mysterious powers recorded under the name of witchcraft, hexism, voodooism, black magic, including the Hawaiian kahuna work. Excuse me one more time, please. Turning back to pages of history, to ancient Rome, Greece, Persia, Egypt, not to speak of India, ancient and modern, we find innumerable instances of the employment of and the knowledge of mental influence in some of its forms. And although many will seek to deny the fact, scientific investigators and students realize that there is but one real underlying principle, underlying and back of all the various forms of manifestation. The good results and the evil results all arise from the employment of the same force. Strange, albeit it may appear at first thought, the secret lies in the fact that this mental influence is a great natural force. Excuse me. Just as is electricity or any other natural force or energy. And like these other natural forces, it may be, and is, used for both good and evil purposes. The electricity which runs our machines, lights our houses, and performs countless other beneficent tasks in the service of man is also used to electrocute criminals. And the unfortunate person who touches a live wire may be struck with instant death. The sun, which warms our earth and renders life possible, also kills countless persons exposed to its rays on the desert, or even in our large cities. Fire, that great friend of man, which has been one of the most potent factors in the evolution of the race, from barbarism to civilization, is also a great enemy, destroying both property and lives. Water, that most necessary element, which renders life possible, and which is necessary to grow our grain and perform countless other good services for us, also acts as an enemy at times, drowning people and sweeping away their homes. Gravitation, which holds all things in place, from suns to stars down to the tiniest atom of matter, or brings down on their heads objects from above them. In short, every natural force or power is capable of producing either beneficent or baleful effects to man, according to the circumstances of the case. We recognize these things and accept them as a law of nature. And yet some would deny the identity of the power of mental influence as manifested in its good and bad uses. There be people who ascribe to God all the good qualities of mental influence, and ascribe to the devil all of its evil uses. These people have primitive minds. Their counterparts are seen in those who would credit God with the rightful reign or sun, the helpful reign of sun, and who ascribe to the devil the same things when there occurs a flood or a drought. Such reasoning is worthy only of a savage mind. The forces are natural forces, and they work according to their own laws, immanent in their constituent qualities and nature, and are in that sense above good and evil. When they work for man's interests and comfort man, calls them good. When they work harm and discomfort to him, he calls them bad. But the force remains unchanged, being neither good nor bad, so to speak. And thus it is with the power of mental influence. It's above good, bad. In itself, it's a great natural force, capable of being used for either weal or woe to mankind. But remember this, there's a difference. While the force in itself is neither good nor bad, the individual who employs it may be, and is, so to speak, good or bad, according to its use. Just as a man commits a good or a bad act when he uses his gun to slay a wild beast attacking another man, or else turns it upon his brother or his neighbors, as the case may be, so is a man good or bad according to his use of mental influence. The merit or demerit lies in the intention and the purpose of the user, not in the force or the power employed by him. Therein lies the difference. On all sides of this, we may see the manifestation of the possession of mental influence. We see men who are able to sway those around them in some mysterious and wonderful way, either by their use of powers of persuasion or by their dominant willpower. Some spring into prominence and power suddenly, in a way unaccountable to those who are ignorant of the secret of mental influence. As we said in the previous chapter, certain people seem to have something about them that makes them attractive or successful in their relations with other people. The personal magnetism of leaders manifests itself strongly. Some having this power to such an extent that the masses follow them like a great flock of sheep after the bellwether with the tinkling bell around his neck. We have all come in contact with the agent or the salesman who managed in some way to sell us things that we didn't want and we had no use for. And after he had gone, we wondered how it all happened. If we had but understood the laws of mental influence, this could not have happened. We have all felt ourselves at some time or another in our lives in the presence of individuals who almost compelled us to do what we knew in our hearts we should not do. A knowledge of the laws of mental influence would have enabled us to overcome the temptation. And not only in the case of personal interviews have we been affected. There's a far more subtle and dangerous use of the power. In other words, in the shape of distant influence or absent treatment, as it has been called. And the increase in the interest and the knowledge of occult masters during the past years has resulted in a widely diffused knowledge of this great force and its consequent employment, worthily and unworthily, by many people who are thereby enabled to gain an influence over their neighbors and fellow men who are not familiar with the laws of the force. It would surprise many people if they knew that some of the multimillionaires of the country and some of its greatest politicians and leaders were secret students of occultism, and who are using their forces upon the masses of the people. Not only this, there are schools of occultism which teach their pupils the theory, practice, and art of mental influence under one name or another, under this guise or that one, the result being that there are a greater number of people equipped for the use of this force and instructed in the practice of employing it, turned out every year than is generally imagined. There are schools for salesmanship giving disguised instruction in the art of mental influence. Nearly every large concern employing selling agents has private instructors for their men who teach them the principles of mental influence. It might be disguised under the name of psychology of business or some similar name. And besides these, there are a number of people who have studied at the feet of some of the great metaphysical, semi-religious cults of the day, who have received instruction in mental influence, disguised under the name of some creed or religious teachings, who have departed from the moral principles inculcated by their teachers, and who are using their knowledge in the shape of so-called treatments of other persons for the purpose of financial gain, to accede to their wishes, or to act so as to bring financial gain to the person giving the treatment. The air is full of this black magic today. And it is surely time that the general masses were instructed on this subject. That's the purpose of this little book. Published and sold at a popular price in order to bring it within the reaches of the purses of the plain people who have been exploited and influenced by those who have acquired a knowledge of the principles of mental influence and who are using it unworthily upon their fellow men. There is self-protection possible to all, and this little book purposes to teach you how to use it. Now, chapter 11 will be magic, black and white. In which we will cover the differences between magic and black magic, and a word of caution and warning against the improper use of the power. See you in the video. Coming up next.